Hello and welcome to the Owl's Nest. I hope you guys are all having a nice Sunday, and today we are going to be doing one of the team previews that was most anticipated, and that is going to be the Los Angeles Gladiators. So last year the Gladiators finished 5th overall in the regular season and then 5th or 6th in the playoffs. They ended up losing on the Shock's 4-0 train, and now we're going to look at some of the roster moves they made this year, how I feel about them, do I think they'll be better or worse than last year, and we're just going to dive right into it. So first up, they are keeping Shaz and Big Goose around at their support line. Those are the two players remaining from the previous team, and I think that's a good call. Shaz and Big Goose have both been great for the support line for the Gladiators, and I think they will be good as well for next year. Now, interestingly enough, the new tank line is going to be OG in Space. So Space they got from the Valiant as they were cleaning house, and OG they traded Decay for. And I kind of like this tank line. I think Space has a lot of veteran experience, and he was definitely one of the main leaders in the Valiant over the past 2 years. And then if you look at OG, he definitely has a lot of potential, but Dallas had just struggled a lot in both Season 1 and Season 2. So now we get to see him in a new organization, and that might be great for him. I think these two could have fantastic synergy together, and yeah, I just overall like it. Now we're going to get to one of my question marks for the team, and that's going to be their DPS line. So they acquired Birdring from the London Spitfire, and I think that's probably a good move. I think Birdring has a lot of potential when he's hot. He's a great hit scan player, but sometimes if he's not totally in the game, he's a little weak. And then they also have Mirror and Jaru, and I don't know enough about these players to have a definite opinion, but I think if I'm the Gladiators, I might want one more big name free agent DPS. It's probably a little bit too late now, but I think that's probably what I would like to see the most out of this team. When Flower was available, I thought that might be an interesting pickup, but instead he is going to play for Runaway next year. But yeah, we'll see. I think that's probably the big issue of this Gladiators lineup. Alongside these guys, they have some bench players who are going to be probably Bishu. If you guys don't remember Bishu, he was on the Gladiators in Season 1 as an off-tank, and then he was on Guangzhou as an off-tank, and then he is now signing back with the Gladiators. And then we have LH Cloudy, who is a part of the Paris Eternal. And then we have Paintbrush coming from the Mayhem Academy. So overall, I think with the starting lineup of Shaz, Big Goose, Space, OG, Birdring, and then either Mirror or Jaru, this team has a lot of potential. I don't know if they're as strong as they were last year, but they definitely could be really strong next year. So now let's go ahead and go into their schedule. Alright, so now I have the schedule for the Los Angeles Gladiators, and let's go ahead and go through it and see how I think they're going to do next season. So first up is going to be the Vancouver Titans, and I'm going to say they lose this one. I think Vancouver has definitely regressed a little bit this offseason, but I don't think that'll be enough to make them lose to the Gladiators in this matchup. Then we have the Shanghai Dragons, and I'm going to say they lose this as well. Yeah, Shanghai has a bit of a tank issue, but I think the Gladiators' DPS issue is a little more glaring than Shanghai's tank issue. So I think I'm going to go with Shanghai on that one. Next up is the Charge, and I'm going to say they lose this one as well. I think the Charge ended last season looking really good, and a lot of that part of the team is sticking together, and the meta isn't as different from Stage 4 as we like to think it is, so I think the Charge will win that. Next up is going to be the Spark, and this one's close. I think they're about the same level. I'll give it to the Gladiators. I think that the Spark, though they haven't made any acquisitions, finished really well last season, so I'm going to still give this one to the Gladiators. That's a toss-up, though. That could go either way. Next up is the Seoul Dynasty, and I'm going to say the Gladiators lose this one too, unfortunately. I think the upgrades that Seoul have made are overall really strong, and I think Profit alongside either Fitz or Illicit will be really good for the team. Next up is going to be the Chengdu Hunters. And Chengdu is such a hard team to predict, but I'm going to say the Gladiators win this. I think maybe Chengdu takes a step down now that every team knows how they're going to try to play. So I'm going to give this to the Gladiators, though Team China did really well in the World Cup, and a lot of that team is carrying over to Chengdu. They won't have Guzhwei, but I still think that that'll be a win for the Gladiators. Next, we have the San Francisco Shock, and yeah, I'm going to say they lose this one. I I can't see a team I legitimately think will beat the San Francisco Shock. They remind me of what Vancouver was going into next year. So I'm going to say that the Gladiators lose that one. Next up is the Fuel, and I think they'll beat the Fuel. I think the Fuel have a lot of issues to work out next year, and I don't think they've made enough changes for how poor their team has performed over the past 2 years, so I'm going to say that the Gladiators win that. Next up is the Spark again, and I'm going to say that they lose this one, just so we have a split here, because I couldn't tell you which team is really better, so I think if we have one win and one loss there, that's pretty equal. Next up is the Charge. I'm going to say that they win this one. I think, kind of for the same reason as Hangzhou, I think the Charge and the Gladiators are about at the same level, so I'll give that win to the Gladiators this time around. That could go either way, though. Next up is Shanghai again, and I think they will lose this one. I think, as I previously mentioned, a lot of Shanghai's upgrades look really good, and I think they're a very versatile team, so I'm going to say that they win that. Chengdu again, I'm going to say that the Gladiators win that for the same reasons as earlier. And then we have the Seoul Dynasty again. I'm going to say they lose that for the same reasons as earlier. And then Dallas in Vancouver, I'm going to say the Gladiators win that. I think this will be kind of a fun matchup. So will this one, but the return of OG and Decay against their former teams. But yeah, I still think that the Gladiators are stronger. Next up is Gladiators against New York. I'm going to say that they lose this one. I think New York is probably better than they were last year. If you look at just who they acquired, I think Hotbo's going to be great there, and I think Who Are You is also going to be really fun to watch. If there's a meta where Genji or Doomfist is going to be really potent, I think Who Are You is going to have a great spot for the NYXL. So I'm going to go with the NYXL on that one. Next up is the Toronto Defiant, and this is a close one, but I'm going to give this one to the Defiant. I think I just like the additions they've made a lot more. And then we have the Spitfire. Ooh, this will be fun. Let's give the win to the Gladiators. I think the Spitfire have a lot of potential. Like, I think Glister could be a standout player for them next year. However, I think that LA Gladiators are just looking a little bit better. Next up is the Paris Eternal, and this will be an interesting one because it is in Paris, and also it's after Sparkle turns 18, so I think that they'll lose it. Both for the home field advantage reason and just Sparkle is such an integral player to Element Mystic, and now he's coming over with his coach to the Paris Eternal, so I think that they will win that. Next up is going to be the Boston Uprising, and I'm going to say that the Gladiators win that. I think that Boston is probably going to struggle a bit more next year. I haven't been really impressed with any of the moves they made, so I'm going to give that one to the Gladiators. Next up is the Shock again, and I'm going to say that they lose this one again. I don't see any team touching the Shock next year, and they could obviously be upset by anybody, but I think that the Gladiators won't be the team to do it. Next up is the first battle for LA against the Valiant, and I'm going to give this one to the Gladiators. I'm a little worried about the Valiant as well. They and Boston kind of seem similar to me, so I'm going to give that one to the Gladiators. Next up is going to be the Justice. I'm going to say they win that one as well. I think the moves that the Justice have made haven't really impressed me enough, and I think Corey's really good, and I think Stratus has still a lot to show, but I just don't see much outside of that group. But I might be wrong there, and that's why they play the games, right? And then we have the Fusion, and I think they'll lose to the Fusion. I think the upgrades that the Fusion have made, if you look at Funny Astro, Alarm, Fury, are just a lot better than what the Gladiators have done this offseason. So I'm going to give that one to the Fusion. Next up is the Mayhem, and I think they'll beat the Mayhem. I'm not too impressed with what the Mayhem are doing next year, and though they have potential and they've shown flashes of greatness over the past couple of years, I don't know. I'm not confident in saying they'll win. So I'm going to give it to the Gladiators. Next up is the Outlaws, and I'm going to say that they lose to the Outlaws. I think that'll be a kind of a toss-up, but I think the upgrades that the Outlaws have made, if it stays consistent enough there, will be strong. Then we have the Reign, and I'm going to say they lose to the Reign. I think the Reign are probably one of the best Western teams we'll see next year. I think the Reign are probably one of the best mixed roster teams we'll see this year, and I just don't see the Gladiators touching them at this point. Next up is going to be the Vancouver Titans, and I think they will lose this one as well. Yeah, Vancouver is going through a tank thing, but as I mentioned, I just don't think they're on the same tier of play. So I'm going to give that one to the Titans. And finally, we have the last battle for LA, and I'm going to give this one to the Los Angeles Gladiators. I think that the Valiant, as I mentioned, are just not going to be as strong this year as they were in the past couple years, and though the Gladiators have some flaws, I think that they can get over those to beat the Valiant. Anyway, that's going to do it for this schedule breakdown. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. So overall, I have the LA Gladiators finishing 13-15 on the 2020 season, and I don't think this is necessarily because the Gladiators are a bad team. I think it's more they just have a pretty difficult schedule. The Pacific Conference just looks a lot more competitive than the Atlantic Conference, and I think that's going to overall hurt the Gladiators' chances of making the 2020 playoffs. I could see them sneaking in as a play-in team, but I'm a little nervous on them. But what do you guys think? Am I completely off on this one, or do you guys think that the Gladiators are going to have kind of a disappointing 2020 season? Let me know, and also, let me know what team you guys want me to cover next. I'm doing these almost completely off fan demand. So, in one video, someone commented they wanted Toronto, and then the last video, they commented they wanted the Gladiators. So who do you guys want next? Because that's how I'm prioritizing these. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys all have a good Sunday, watch some football, and enjoy. I'll talk to you guys later.